Hi, good morning to all of you. So this was your in your first class. I'll tell you the competency and what was taught on that day. This session was taken by Dr. Kavita. I have her recordings for all those who were not present on that day. Okay. So let us see the competency and what was taught to you that day. So the competency was PA 1.3. It is described the history and evolution of pathology. So history tells us a lot. So we definitely need to know about it. So before we go on to Dr. Kavita's lecture, I just want to tell you a story here. And once we say story, it becomes so interesting, right? But you should not sleep off. Story, bedtime. It's not a bedtime story. This story is something that should activate your brain. So that should make you ambitious, brilliant, like George Papanicolaou and his devoted wife Mary. So why I am putting it now is you know about the pap smear now. So you are familiar with Papanicolaou, pap stain, pap smear, and even the common man knows about this as one of the screening tests for early detection of cervical cancer. See, this was what Papanicolaou's invention, contribution, so which is the gold standard even today for screening of cervical cancer. See, this is George Nicholas Papanicolaou. He is the inventor of the pap smear. You can call it as pap smear test also, and founder of exfoliative cytopathology. So we are talking about a great man who is related to one of the branches of pathology, that is cytopathology. So a great pioneer in elucidating the physiology and cytologic characteristics of the female reproductive system. So pap smear is what now we are talking about. I already told you that this is one of the gold standard in screening for cervical cancer. So he was the one who revolutionized this early detection of cervical cancer. Personal life, very dedicated scientist, very modest, hardworking. I am stressing on all this. To be successful in life, yes, all of us need to have dedication, be modest and hardworking. See, he was working always. He did not take any vacations, leave, 24/7. All 7 days in a week he was working. Because he was relishing what he was doing. Really immersing himself in the wonders of his research. And there's one more aspect added to it. So wife was always with him. Probably that's why he made lab as his home or whatever. His capable wife, Mary. So she managed both the laboratory and the household affairs. Even, very interesting story behind her was, she was even an experimental subject for his study. We always say there's a woman behind every man's success. So look at Mary, who is with Papanicolaou, husband, in the laboratory. She worked at but they have really struggled, to come to this level. She was working as in one store as a seamstress. She was sewing those buttons and all that. And Papanicolaou was a salesman. He was selling some carpets or something. Then, after that, see, we have to earn for our livelihood, right? He was a violin player in a restaurant and also worked as a clerk at a Greek newspaper, violin player. See, few people definitely have one of the hobby, especially if you're into learning music or any instrument, dance and all that. So your right brain, the center for creativity, that will be very active. And I've seen many students who are into all this. They fare very well in their academics also. So 1914, he obtained position at the New York's University's Pathology Department, and also in Cornell University Medical College Anatomy Department. So wife also joined him there as a technician. So wife's name, let us look at her name. So Maciej Papanicolaou. There's one more, starting with A. So it was so difficult for people to pronounce and her name. That's why she became Mary. So Mary is called the soul of gynecological cytopathology, the soul of gynecological cytopathology. What was Papanicolaou doing? His research, he was observing the ovulatory cycle of guinea pigs. He was not a clinician, though he was in a medical school, did medicine, but he was not a clinician, so he lacked access to patients. So what happened? For 21 years, Mary, so she volunteered herself as an experimental subject for her husband. So he was studying the cytological changes that was occurring in the cyclical changes occurring in the guinea pigs. So he wanted to study the same in humans, where wife herself volunteered. So that's like climbing up on the examination coach every day so that he could take a sample from her cervix. So he could discommit the cells from the cervix and make a smear and study. Why did she do that? She wanted her husband to be successful. There was no other option for her but to follow him inside the lab, making his way of life hers. Is very important. So both of them led a very happy life, and they're so much dedicated into research, and they decided not to have children so she could continue collaborating with her husband. See, a great lady. And it was not just enough, any study, any research, we know the sample size and all that. So it was only one person sample. So Papanicolaou wanted many more samples, cervical smears to be studied. So what did she do? What is she having in her hand? Maybe a very good cook. So probably, so she provided additional subjects for her husband's research. How? So she had a party, called some of her lady friends, female friends, and convinced them. So they agreed to have their own cervixes sampled. So this is what we do. So when we take up a research project, so when patients come, so we explain them what we are going to do, and then only if they consent that we include them for the study, and of course ethical clearance, everything is a must now. So she was successful in doing that. See what happened. So of her friends who underwent the cervical smear examination, later one of these women was found to have cervical cancer. So what did Papanicolaou do? So he was routinely studying the smears. Now he has found that there is something abnormal in the cytological appearance. Do you all remember we have given you pictures of cervical smear, normal along with dysplasia. So he took her sample back to the lab, and with the help of another cytologist, so he goes to a cytologist and he determines that these were cancer cells. The abnormal cells which he could see in her smear was cancer cells. So this was the day when Papanicolaou says this was the first observation of cancer cells in the smear of uterine cervix. He says, gave me one of the greatest thrills I ever experienced during my scientific career. Most of us, when we see any interesting case, lines, and when you say, "Ah, it's so nice," I always say, yeah, it is nice to look at, we have made a diagnosis, but we need to look at the pain behind, the patient behind is. So that was Papanicolaou. So how, he could get through whatever he wanted to do. So this was a Google Doodle, Google Doodle, honors pap smear inventor Papanicolaou. And this was May 13th, 2019. Many of our friends and pathologists were so excited to see, the Papanicolaou in Google Doodle. So this would have marked his 136th birthday. That was something great. This was what I just wanted to begin with before listening to Dr. Kavita's session on history of pathology. But I always wonder, why don't we call this as pap smear? Why only pap smear, right? So wife equally contributed to whatever research husband was into, and more than that, she herself was the experimental subject. Okay, so this is about Papanicolaou. Please do not forget. So what was done almost, I should say 1914, we'll say 136 years, for his, about 100 years back. Even today this holds good. Maybe the methodology we have adapted, a better methodology is adapted. So let's listen to Kavita. Thank you.
Good morning, students, and congratulations to all of you for having cleared your first year and you have started attending classes for your second year. I know you would be very happy and enthusiastic to know what is there in the second year. So you must be aware you are all learning about 3 subjects: pathology, microbiology and pharmacology, mainly for this CBME batch of students, and forensic medicine also parallelly, but you would be taking exams in the next year. So basically you are concentrating on pathology, microbiology and for pharmacology. So as you all know, this subject pathology has evolved over years. So let us look at the history of pathology before you actually understand the subject of pathology. You all must be knowing there are so many branches in pathology: histopathology, cytopathology, immunopathology, blood banking or transfusion medicine, and so many things like that. So it is evolving over years. So earlier pathology was combined with microbiology a few decades ago, and only of late, about maybe 30-40 years ago, it has been split into a separate subject. Pathology and microbiology are separate subjects now, and a lot of advances are taking place in pathology also now. So let us try to understand how this pathology evolved over so many years. So from the prehistoric times to the medieval period. So as students, you would have seen your seniors who have taken the Hippocratic Oath. Those who have all graduated, finished their MBBS and taken the Hippocratic Oath. So those who are already doctors, you would have seen the symbol of a doctor being displayed on their cars or on their aprons or all over, wherever there is a pharmacy or an ambulance, and everywhere there is a symbol of doctor. So this symbol which is displayed on this screen, there are 2 symbols seen. So one symbol on the left side has a stork with wings, and there are 2 serpents which are intertwining over the stork. And it so happened that this symbol actually represents the symbol of God Hermes, and this is actually the symbol of Caduceus, who is the symbol of God Hermes, who is supposed to be the patron of God commerce, trade, merchants, and protector of tricksters and thieves. So in 1902, this symbol was wrongly proposed by the US Army Corps, and without knowing about the actual symbol, it was mistakenly proposed and it was accepted, and it still holds good even in today's world, because over years it is being used. Okay, but actually it is the rod of Asclepius, which is the true symbol of healing, which is displayed on the screen on the right side. Here we have a single stalk with a single serpent intertwined around the rod, and this is supposed to be the Greek god of healing and medicine, and we are actually supposed to accept this symbol, but mistakenly the symbol of Caduceus, that is the symbol of God Hermes, is being used and accepted over all these years. Anyway, during the Hippocratic Oath, we remember Hippocrates, who has really contributed so much. So let's talk about Hippocrates a little later. This Asclepius, who is actually the son of Apollo, who is the god of light, sun, truth, and healing. Okay, and he has daughters called Hygeia, who is a goddess of hygiene and cleanliness, and Panacea, that is a god of remedies. And Hippocratic Oath, as I said, which is taken by all the physicians, is actually dedicated to these four deities, that is Apollo, Asclepius, Hygeia, and Panacea. So because of their contributions to pathology and because they are the symbol of healing, we dedicate our Hippocratic Oath to these people, or whom we call as God. A lot of contributions to anatomy and pathology had started long ago, that is 3 centuries BC, by the Alexandrian Greeks like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Even before all these people contributed to pathology or anatomy and in general to medicine, earlier there was a concept of documenting on papyrus. So papyrus is actually a leaf which was used in ancient times to write down something or to document. But papyrus being a leaf, it got degenerated, and none of the observations made by great people in those days were available for continuing the research work and to add to the existing knowledge. But the actual rational approach to disease was done by Greek healers, which was led by Hippocrates, and that is why he is called as the father of medicine. Hippocrates led the team, and he and his followers contributed a lot, and they documented also their findings by the rational approach to diseases. And a lot of contributions further after that were continuously made to pathology by great people. Like we have Cornelius Celsus, who described the cardinal signs of inflammation, and Gladden, who described crab-like growth as cancer, and such other contributions. So even from India, Charaka and Sushruta, so physician and surgeon actually of ancient times, they compiled a book on medical and surgical sciences about 200 AD, so many years ago. So a lot of contributions were thus made by ancient physicians and surgeons. And following that, what happened was there was a widespread and devastating epidemics occurring in those eras, which reversed the process of this rational thinking, which is still followed. But what happened is this rational thinking again came to a stop, and people started believing again on supernatural concepts and divine punishments for sins and things like that. And then after this started the era of gross pathology. So all the scientists who contributed to to this anatomical pathology or pathology are still remembered, and one of them is Giovanni B. Morgagni, who is supposed to be the father of modern anatomical pathology. So he is an Italian anatomist, and he has written book on the seeds and causes of disease using his anatomical dissection experience. So Giovanni B. Morgagni is remembered by all of us for his great contribution. Similarly, other contributors like John Hunter, who was a person behind the development of the concept of museum. So he pioneered museum, and of course he also pioneered smallpox vaccination, who is a Scottish surgeon, and that is why he is known as the father of museum pathology. And Karl Landsteiner really contributed a lot in blood banking or transfusion medicine, and thereby he is known as the father of transfusion medicine. He is an Austrian biologist, basically a physician and immunologist. So he distinguished the main blood groups in 1900, and 1937 he identified the rhesus factor. He also discovered poliovirus with Constantin Levadita, and thereby he received the Nobel Prize in Physiology as well as medicine, and he is known as the father of transfusion medicine. And Rudolf Virchow, of course, he is the father of pathology, and he developed the concept of clinico-pathological correlation, which we refer to as CPC. So it is so important for pathologists. Even now we say, yes, there has to be always an interaction with the physician. The pathologist and the physician should always be interacting with each other, so that the disease process is understood well and concepts are clear. So this Rudolf Virchow, who developed this concept of CPCs, is a German pathologist who proposed the cellular theory of disease, and he has lot of other contributions to medicine, like we talk about Virchow's triad, Virchow's lymph node, and Virchow's Robin space, Virchow's Sickle syndrome, Virchow's angle, Virchow's cell theory, and systematic method of autopsy. All these things was developed by Rudolf Virchow. So he was the first to describe and name diseases like leukemia, chordoma, embolism, and thrombosis. A very great contribution was also made by Paul Ehrlich, who is known as the father of clinical pathology. So he is a German Jewish physician who was conferred the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine for his work in immunology. And as we all know, the Ehrlich's test for urobilinogen, it was developed by him. He described the test first, and we started doing this test. And of course, staining techniques of cells and bacteria, and he also laid foundations of hematology and clinical pathology. So that is why he is called as a father of clinical pathology. And Papanicolaou, so the full name being George N. Papanicolaou, who was the first person who developed the Pap test for the screening of cervical cancer. So he is the pioneer in cytopathology. That is why he is called as the father of cytology. And then came the era of technology development and cellular pathology. So many stains that we do nowadays, that is Gram stain, was developed by Christian Gram. Romanowski stains was developed by Romanowski, and Robert Koch contributed so much to cellular pathology. Meg Grunwald and Jimsa, they also contributed for the stains that were developed by them. And William Leishman, so the famous Leishman stain which we carry out on hematology slides. All these were contributions by these great people in the evolution of pathology. And now what we practice is the modern pathology. So modern pathology nowadays, we feel paralyzed without the support of these techniques which were developed by so many great people. So Albert Koons developed the immunofluorescence technique, and Barbara McClintock developed the flexibility and dynamism of DNA. Then the double helical structure of DNA was contributed by Watson and Crick, and so much of research is going on nowadays. Then in situ hybridization technique which is followed nowadays. Recombinant DNA technique or hybridoma technique is also followed. Then cloning, as well as the most recent one, that is the stem cell research, which is of late gaining so much importance in pathology. So thus modern pathology, it involves the study of diseases at genetic and molecular level. So it is all the molecular era nowadays which is being followed. So with this basic knowledge, you can go ahead to understand how pathology evolved and what are all the modern things that we try to understand in today's era. So I wish you all a very happy learning in pathology. Thank you.